Christopher Columbus did not discover America. This raises a painful question. How can one claim to discover a place where the inhabitants are watching them arrive from the shore? It feels almost cruel to think about it. The portrayal of black individuals as we understand them stretches back to the very dawn of time, their presence in the civilized world traceable to the early centuries, even before the coming of Christ. Yet, history tells us that Columbus discovered America in 1492, while the first black people to arrive were enslaved Africans brought by Portuguese and Spanish traders in the early 16th century through the horrific transatlantic slave trade. But none of these claims hold true. We have been misled for so long. Recent research has revealed the haunting truth. Some black people had been in America for over 1,000 years before Columbus ever set foot on the continent. Strong evidence points to this reality, which shatters the conventional narrative. The main idea of my book is to illuminate that early America, long before Columbus, was a far more intricate society than people have been led to believe. It involved Africans who came on various occasions, sometimes by accident, other times intentionally, leaving an indelible mark on the formation of certain American civilizations. When we speak of the pre-Columbian period, we refer to a time long before 1492. It is a cruel joke to believe that Columbus discovered the Americas in that year. In truth, he never even reached this continent. Columbus wandered through the Caribbean islands, lingering at the fringes of great civilizations, often met with disbelief. It is unsettling but true. We are here to peel back the layers of history, to unveil the raw truth that has been hidden for so long. Journey with us as we seek to uncover who the true lords of the Americas really are. There were countless mariners before Columbus who arrived on these shores decades, even eons earlier. Many people traversed these islands and this continent, yet it is only in recent years that evidence has surfaced, slowly growing to indicate that many of these pre-Columbian explorers may have come from Africa. The facts suggest that black people were present in America thousands of years before Columbus. Before we proceed, I ask you to support our efforts by hitting the like button and sharing with friends and family to keep spreading this eye-opening narrative. Consider subscribing to stay with us for more if you haven't already. So let's dive deeper into this truth. The first scientist to promote the possibility that early explorers might have come from Africa was Leo Venner, born in Russia. He immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century, hoping to find his place in British Honduras, where he envisioned a vegetarian commune. When that dream fell apart, he returned to the US and became a professor at Harvard University. During his time in Mesoamerica, he began to notice distressing patterns that led him to consider that the origins of American civilization might indeed lie in Africa. Between 1920 and 1922, he published an extensive 3-volume work called Africa and the Discovery of America. Unfortunately, this was the 1920s, a time when serious archaeological evidence was still lacking to support his theories. The world was still fixated on raiding tombs in Egypt, and he had little more than names to back his claims. Yet he sensed that other clues existed. For instance, he pointed out that Columbus himself acknowledged the presence of African mariners in his diary from his second voyage. Columbus recounted how the natives of Hispaniola presented him with gold-tipped metal spearheads, claiming they had been brought by black-skinned people who arrived in large boats from the south and southeast. Is this merely coincidence? I think not. Upon returning to Spain, Columbus sent these spearheads for analysis. They were found to be covered in a metal alloy known as guanin. Metallurgists discovered this alloy comprised 32 parts, 18 of gold, 6 of silver, and 8 of copper, an exact match for the metal used in spearheads crafted in Western Africa for thousands of years, carried by medieval African warriors, including those from Mali and the Moors. The West Africans themselves referred to this metal as guanin. The same name was used by the natives of Hispaniola, yet nothing more was said about it. The silence speaks volumes. It seems that in the courts of Spain, it was all too convenient to ignore any challenges to their claims of discovery over the islands of the West Indies. The truth is hard to bear. It was black-skinned people who had already discovered and populated America for thousands of years before Columbus made his fateful journey. Columbus landed in the Americas on October 12, 1492, at a small island in the Bahamas. Over the course of 3 separate voyages, he returned repeatedly to the Bahamas and later to an island now known as Hispaniola, which encompasses modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But what followed his arrival was a descent into hell for the people who had welcomed him with open arms. This was the tragic legacy of Christopher Columbus, a figure often heralded as a European hero. He was greeted warmly by the native inhabitants of Hispaniola, who treated him with extraordinary hospitality. Yet his soldiers responded with unspeakable brutality, snatching babies from their mothers' arms and dashing their heads against the rocks, feeding children alive to their dogs and mutilating women. In a grotesque parody of the crucifixion of Jesus and his apostles, Columbus ordered the hanging of 13 Native Americans. While many deaths resulted from diseases unwittingly introduced by the Europeans, countless others succumbed to overwork, starvation, and outright murder as their resources were stripped away. Columbus demanded gold from everyone, and those who could not meet his demands faced horrific punishments. Hands cut off, some sent back to their villages with their severed hands and noses hung around their necks. What he instigated laid the groundwork for the genocidal extermination of nearly all Native American peoples. Before Columbus's arrival, an estimated 100 million indigenous people roamed the Americas. By the 19th century, their numbers had dwindled to less than 1 million. This destruction was overtly endorsed by revered figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote about the necessity of exterminating Native American peoples. But let us not stray too far from the subject at hand. The crucial point remains. The people who originally discovered America were not only Africans, but also believed to have arrived from Asia around 15,000 years ago. This reality starkly contradicts the popular narrative. African American history did not begin with slavery in the New World. The African presence in America stretches back thousands of years before Columbus's arrival in 1492. Africans were not merely brought to America as slaves during the transatlantic slave trade. They had been living in the Americas long before European colonization. As we acknowledge Columbus's voyages in search of new lands on behalf of Europe, we must remember that he was not the first to make that journey. Untaught evidence exists suggesting that Africans reached the Americas centuries before Columbus ever did. In 1493, as the saying goes, Columbus stole all he could see. On his second voyage, 10 times larger than the first, Columbus embarked on a frantic yet ultimately fruitless journey in search of gold and spices. He brought along several natives from San Salvador, an island the inhabitants called Guanahani. He continued to wander, whimsically renaming every island he encountered. Leo Venner, the curious linguist and etymologist, could not help but notice that many place names and botanical names in Mesoamerica bore a striking resemblance to languages from Africa, particularly Bantu and even Arabic. This raises unsettling questions about the true history of the Americas. There is overwhelming evidence that Black history in the Americas did not begin with slavery. For instance, the presence of certain plants found today in both America and Africa has puzzled numerous botanists. Take the calabash, a species originally from West Africa that was cultivated in America long before European arrival, predating its existence even in Indonesia or Polynesia. The Pacific was the last place where bottle gourds expanded, highlighting the painful journey of these plants through time. It's hard to fathom how certain crops like yams, sweet potatoes, domesticated cotton, peanuts, and tobacco found their way to both West Africa and the Americas, if not for the transatlantic trade. Africans were exceptional shipbuilders, boldly navigating diverse waters in their well-crafted vessels, some capable of carrying up to 80 men or more. But how did these plants, languages, and cultural elements cross the vast ocean to the Americas? Some hold the belief that over thousands of years, Africans migrated out of Africa, traversing the Bering Strait and making their way down into South America. Yet another explanation exists, and it is one that invites reflection on a lost narrative. Africans had ships, 4 types of vessels to be exact, showcasing their maritime ingenuity. An example of Nubian pottery reveals depictions of either a long-hulled boat or a papyrus raft. dating back to 3000 BC. Another painting, a bird's-eye view of an oared riverboat in Chad, dates from 3500 BCE, capturing a glimpse of their advanced maritime culture. The Africans of Guinea crafted dugout canoes from monumental trees along their coast, and in 1500, just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacho Pereiro wrote of finding the largest canoes made from a single trunk, some so large that they could carry 80 men. The West Africans were known to lash 2 dugout canoes together side by side, demonstrating their remarkable skill, akin to the Polynesian catamarans that sailed the seas. A 15th century Portuguese painting illustrates sailing canoes on the Congo estuary. By the mid-1400s, the Portuguese had learned that African traders were visiting Brazil, hinting at a long-forgotten connection between continents. Norwegian adventurer Thor Heyerdahl, utilizing ancient shipbuilding techniques, successfully constructed and sailed his vessels in 1969 and 1970, showing that Africans could have navigated the Atlantic as early as 2000 BCE using papyrus vessels. These skilled mariners from West Africa demonstrated their prowess, sailing to the Americas long before Columbus set sail. Their vessels could cover around 100 miles per day, even without sails. Historian Amir Alib reported that voyages west from Mali occurred in 1311, a staggering 150 years before Columbus. When he inquired about rumors of Atlantic travel from the Mali emperor, depicted here holding a globe made of solid gold, the emperor recounted how his predecessor had commissioned an expedition of 200 ships laden with men and resources for 2 years. Tragically, only one ship returned, bearing a captain who spoke of encountering a powerful current in the open sea. He turned back, leaving behind countless souls lost to the abyss. The strongest evidence of an African presence in America before Columbus may well come from Columbus himself. American historian and linguist Leo Weir of Harvard University highlighted a journal entry from Columbus that confirmed the existence of black-skinned people who had sailed from the southeast in boats, trading gold-tipped spears. Furthermore, the properties of gold, copper, and silver alloys from the spears closely matched those forged in African Guinea, casting shadows of doubt over the narrative of discovery and challenging the silence that has obscured these truths for far too long. The inhabitants of Hispaniola indeed confirmed to Columbus what he recorded in his journal during his second voyage, which included references to black people. Other explorers like Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who is best known for crossing the Isthmus of Panama to the Pacific Ocean in 1513, also reported encountering dark-skinned individuals in the Caribbean long before the Atlantic slave trade. However, some historians argue that Columbus was misinterpreted. They suggest he may have referred to Native Americans painting their skin black, rather than acknowledging the presence of Africans. The first documented African presence in the Americas is believed to have been led by Black Egyptians under King Ramses III during the 19th dynasty, around 1871 to 1292 BC. Greek historian Herodotus noted the ancient Egyptians' exceptional seafaring and navigational skills, highlighting their capabilities long before Columbus's time. Moreover, an Egyptian chancellor, Dr. Imep, recorded evidence that has been largely overlooked by Eurocentric archaeologists: artifacts from Egypt found throughout North America, from Algonquin writings on the East Coast to Egyptian place names in the Grand Canyon. In 1311 AD, another significant wave of African exploration occurred, led by King Abubakar II of the Mali Empire, which was larger than the Holy Roman Empire. The king dispatched 200 ships carrying men and another 200 ships loaded with trade materials, crops, animals, cloth, and vital African knowledge of astronomy, religion, and the arts. While some might find the idea of Africans crossing the vast Atlantic in primitive boats implausible, numerous successful modern attempts have illustrated that ancient African boats, including dugouts, could indeed traverse the ocean within weeks, even without advanced sails or rudders. As we drift away from the European age of exploration and begin to move beyond racial and intellectual prejudice, more historians are recognizing that Africans were skilled navigators long before Europeans. This fact challenges the long-held notion that seafaring was exclusively a European achievement, an endeavor of which they are notably proud. The idea that Black Africans could have braved the tumultuous Atlantic waters and reached the New World before Europeans undermines a historically white sense of ownership over the seas. When considering ancient Mexico, most people think of civilizations like the Incas, Aztecs, and Maya. However, archaeologists uncovered evidence of a civilization known as the Olmec around 1200 BCE, which predated any other advanced civilization in the Americas. This African origin civilization was among the earliest in Mesoamerica and is often regarded as the mother culture of Mexico. Existing between 1200 and 400 BCE in present-day Veracruz and Tabasco, the Olmec civilization is renowned for its colossal stonehead carvings of leaders that unmistakably depict African features. These statues are a testament to the early African presence in the Americas and serve as a critical piece of evidence in understanding the continent's complex history. Explorer Jose Melgar, who discovered the first of these gigantic stone heads in Veracruz in 1862, remarked on their distinctly Ethiopian appearance. The Olmec were known for advanced agricultural practices, monumental sculptures, and complex social structures. Many historians believe that the Olmec civilization was influenced by African cultures, evident in the similarities in their art and religious practices. The enormous Olmec head statues, reaching heights of up to 11.5 feet and weighing between 30 to 40 tons, typically depict helmeted black men with large eyes, broad noses, and full lips. Ancient African historian Professor Van Sertima illustrated how the Olmec were the first Mesoamerican civilization to employ written language, sophisticated astronomy, and mathematics, ultimately building the first cities in Mexico. Their contributions significantly influenced later civilizations, including the Maya, shaping the rich tapestry of the Americas long before European contact. Michael Coe, a leading historian in Mexico, has asserted that all later civilizations in Mexico and Central America fundamentally rely on earlier ones, suggesting a continucultural evolution. Recent archaeological findings have further supported the theory of pre-Columbian African transatlantic travel. Notably, German toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova reported the discovery of cocaine and nicotine in ancient Egyptian mummies, substances derived solely from American plants. Cocaine from Erythroxylum coca, and nicotine from Nicotiana tabacum. Such findings imply that these compounds were introduced to ancient Egypt through trade with the Americas. Moreover, the religious practices of early American civilizations, including the Maya, Aztecs, and Incas, reveal worship of black gods. Surviving portraits of these deities, such as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, and Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, distinctly depict them with dark skin and woolly hair. This raises questions about why Native Americans would create images that are unmistakably African if they had never encountered them. Further evidence of cross-cultural contact can be found in numerous wall paintings in caves in the southwestern region of Mexico, depicting rituals similar to the ancient Egyptian opening of the mouth ceremony and cross-libation practices. The frequency and nature of these religious similarities suggest more than mere coincidence. Professor Everett, a U.S. innovator, points out another vital indicator of African presence: the pyramids in early American civilizations. While Egypt is famous for its pyramids, the Americas actually contain more pyramids than any other region in the world. The Egyptian pyramids, however, are older and show a progression in architectural sophistication. In contrast, the pyramids found in Central America do not demonstrate the same level of evolutionary development, implying that those who constructed the American pyramids had already mastered the art of pyramid building, potentially bringing this knowledge from Africa. The earliest known pyramid in the Americas, built by the Olmec civilization in Tabasco, Mexico, aligns with this theory. The Olmec, known for their colossal stone heads, also contributed significantly to early American civilization by introducing pyramid construction, political systems, religious practices, mathematics, writing, and a sophisticated calendar. Archaeological discoveries have revealed ancient skulls and skeletons believed to belong to people of African descent. A 1975 New York Times publication noted that a Smithsonian Institution team found 2 male skeletons in the U.S. Virgin Islands dated to around 1250 AD. Polish professor Andrzej Mnuch testified to the discovery of African skulls at various sites, while additional ancient skeletons believed to be of African origin have been unearthed in Central and South America. These findings suggest that Africans had a presence in the Americas much earlier than previously recognized. Most historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, and scholars now agree that Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Not only were Native Americans present when he arrived, but various groups, including the Chinese, Phoenicians, and other Europeans, had been sailing to the Americas long before Columbus ventured across the Atlantic. Adding to this body of evidence is David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans. Imhotep, a brilliant African-American scholar, presents a revolutionary perspective. Unlike previous scholars, he does not merely claim that Africans influenced Native Americans. Instead, he argues that the Native Americans themselves were originally Black Africans who first reached the New World at least 56,000 years ago. Dr. Imhotep identifies two major groups that populated ancient America. The first group consisted of Black Africans who began sailing to the New World tens of thousands of years ago. These individuals were likely short in stature, resembling modern pygmies. The second group arrived later, around 3000 BC, comprising Mongolians who crossed the Bering Strait into North America. There, they encountered the Africans who had arrived earlier. Some Mongolians intermingled with the indigenous Africans, while others conquered or exterminated them, leading to the emergence of what we recognize today as Native Americans. In essence, the image of Native Americans as depicted on the original American nickel in school textbooks and in Hollywood films does not accurately represent the diverse and complex history of the continent's first inhabitants. The original Native Americans were indeed early inhabitants of the Americas, descending from indigenous Africans who were among the first to arrive, along with invading Mongolians. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for this early African presence is the construction of Native American mounds, built by Black Africans, which can still be found in 41 states across North America. The Cahokia Mound in Illinois, for instance, is nearly as large as the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Considering the evidence presented, it seems likely that ancient Africans, who were masters of shipbuilding, made their way to the Americas from West Africa long before Columbus. The tradition of shipbuilding and sailing has a history spanning over 20,000 years in the Sahara, with cave paintings depicting ancient ships showcasing this maritime legacy. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in shipbuilding, exemplified by the ship of King Khufu, which measures 44 meters long and was buried at the foot of the Great Pyramid in Giza around 2500 BC. This vessel was discovered in 1954, remarkably intact. Moreover, the similarities in botany, religion, and pyramid construction between ancient African and American cultures underscore the significant influence of Africans in ancient America. Historically, African peoples have been exceptional explorers and carriers of culture, often without resorting to warfare against those they encountered. Unfortunately, the greatest threat to Africa's glorious future lies in the ignorance of its rich past. Pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas were built on a foundation laid by Africans and enriched by the ingenuity of Native Americans. Conversely, post-Columbus America was established on the mass killing of indigenous peoples and the exploitation of African slaves, and this exploitation persists today. Despite the evidence of early African presence in the Americas, the contributions of Africans to the development of these regions have often been overlooked or marginalized. The legacies of slavery and racism have obscured the true extent of African influence on American culture, society, and history. In truth, Africans began arriving in the Americas thousands of years before Columbus, and the evidence of their presence, though often ignored in mainstream education, is overwhelming. Even early Mexican scholars recognize the profound and enduring impact of Black explorers on the New World. As author J. Eiler noted, Mexican civilization can be traced back to Africa. Indian scholar Rafik Giraboy asserted that Black individuals began their careers in America not as slaves but as masters, highlighting that Africans played a significant role in civilizing America long before Europeans arrived and claimed to have civilized Africa. The growing body of evidence supporting this history is becoming impossible to ignore. It's essential for education policymakers to reevaluate curricula to reflect America's extensive pre-Columbian history. The history of Black people in America extends far beyond Columbus's arrival in 1492, with clear evidence suggesting that Africans were present in the Americas long before European colonization. Acknowledging and exploring this rich, complex history challenges traditional narratives of American history. By doing so, we gain a deeper understanding of the diverse and interconnected roots of American society. It's crucial to continue researching and sharing these untold stories to honor the contributions and resilience of Black communities throughout history. Thank you for watching this informative video segment. If you found it interesting, please support our work by giving a thumbs up, sharing it with friends and family to spread awareness of this important narrative, and subscribing for more content. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.